Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's Nature Folklore Sessions, 10th of October, 2021, and I've actually got the intro this time. Well, thank you all for joining me. I'm swaying backwards and forwards because I still haven't got used to this green screen lark, but to make it more entertaining, I'm actually going to be changing the background, and so maybe the other backgrounds will be better. It's a lovely day here at Chakra. Sun's out, but I was going to try and broadcast outside, but unfortunately, when I was sitting in the tree labyrinth, there was this sort of, I did have sweater on, but it was too chilly. So I've come in, but I've opened up the door of the studio. Sorry, I can't turn the camera around to show you the trees and the sun and how it is. It's not quite as warm as it was here yesterday. Anyway, a lot of people in Ireland will probably be out in their gardens, off for a walk in the woods and so forth, and be watching later. So thank you to the people from other countries who are probably tuning in and going to be fascinated by the fire dragon stories today. So as usual, thank you for joining me. It's our weekly time. It is nature-centered folklore after all, and connecting this within your favorite sanctuary space and expressing inspired visions from your sanctuary with your poetry, writing, arts, crafts, performance, and problem solving. Now, the main intent of the Nature Folklore sessions here is to present the changes of nature through the annual seasons and accompany this with stories, poems, and a few attempted explanations of how humans recognize and honor the points of change that we have through the seasonal cycles throughout the year. Now, there's plenty of people out there that are sharing the folklore of battles, treachery, acquisition, and heroes. And I've been getting some requests for this over the past week, but it's really not what I do. I'm keeping the battles stuff a bit minimal. It's going to be a bit today. I'm probably, by keeping this with nature cycles, I'm probably sacrificing putting an extra 0 or 2 onto the end of viewing figures, because surprisingly, the thirst for battle and quests and that type of thing is extremely popular, and certainly still much more popular amongst humans, I think, than the actual connection with nature. And people will argue with me that nature is a vicious place, so we should have battles. Anyway, I'm focusing still on the nature of things like the water folklore, the tree folklore, the changing seasons, the harvest, that type of stuff. So Nature Folklore Sessions, as I say, is about water, woodlands, wells, orm, growing, harvest, brewing, the underworld, the she, all kinds of interpretations around that. And this afternoon, the theme is fire dragons, serpents, and snakes. And I better get a picture up for that, start getting the pictures going, get the glasses on. And so that's the logo I've been putting out for that. And this is the third episode of an 8-episode series that I'm broadcasting for you for this one season. Now, this afternoon, I'm going to be exploring these fire entities in relation to this being the end of the harvest Sawan season. So thank you. You see at the bottom there. Oh, sorry, I'm still getting the flecky bit. If I go towards the camera, it seems the flecky bit goes away. But if I go back here, I disappear, don't I? I'll try and work this out through the show anyway. But thank you, you wonderful Patreon subscribers. There you go. There, it helps making this Nature Folklore sessions possible. So thank you for that. And some subscribers will be watching live here today, and you may already be here. So bless you all for that and helping out here. And more subscribers warmly welcome and actually needed. Anyway, these folklore sessions and labyrinth gardens, you may have heard that Karakori Cottage and Labyrinth Gardens are now up for sale. And people have been concerned about this. I'll give you some pictures just to remind you of who we are and what we got here. There's a few sort of recent-y pictures. Anyway, the whole shebang. I haven't got the Karakori Labyrinth Gardens up. And so there's concern, is that going to be the end of it all? Certainly not. Whatever our outcome, there's still going to be a Nature Folklore Sunday sessions, and there'll still be, wherever I go to, I'll insist there's still a native woodland sanctuary to base this all on. So something like this will definitely be wherever I go to. So, because that's the basis, it'd be very difficult to do this show without having a sanctuary, the woodland sanctuary. It'd be a bit of a fraud, wouldn't it? Because this show started with woodland sanctuaries before there was a show. And I hope that this will be somewhere that Wisdom subscribers will still be able to visit next spring. But we don't know how fast this is going to sell. So there'll always be somewhere. I'm keeping going. Anyway, let's see who's joined us for today. There's a few of you have got some comments up. Gary, boy, you're getting very loyal. Thanks for that, Gary. He's here. And Alan's loyal. He's here. And he's always having parties. Look at that. And Sherry, lovely to see you here from down east Maine. It's lovely there as well in Maine. Fantastic. And Shell is around. Glad you're having a lovely day. We're waiting on rain. We're not actually got rain in the forecast now for at least a week. We've had our good dose, I think, in the past week. Yeah, that's who's joined us for now. So thank you very much for kicking this off for a wonderful start. And I'll just get on with some tales, because there's quite a few subjects that I'm going to try and work through today. But during this session, let's get rid of the picture here so you can actually see my mug again. During this session, I'm going to wander through stories, traditions of dragons, snakes, serpents, and their fire. So this is something I haven't done. This is the first. I'm going to change the screen to see how this works. This will give you, I'm going to give you a bit of a different screen behind me. There we go. There it is, the dragon. Absolutely fantastic. And there seems to be less distraction. So I'll work with that for a little while. So it's dragons, snakes, serpents, and their fire. I don't have any live guests, unfortunately. So I trust you'll enjoy my company with the subject for a while. But please ask questions as we go along. Your comments are very, very welcome. But through the session today, the Nature Folklore session, I intend to cover stories of fire dragons, fire serpents, and the fire serpents within us as well. So there's what we tend to think of as a dragon, isn't it? And I think that's a lovely picture of the fire, an interpretation of the fire serpents with us. And I'm going to go local and international with fire serpent traditions and stories, also relating international stories to our local stories, how they've probably come here through international, especially from Babylon, Mesopotamia, very much like the Ale House Wives series have been doing. It's as if the dragons have followed her. But this is all stuff that I've learned over the past 60 years or so. And I suppose the first thing, what is a dragon? So I'll bring the logo that I've been using up for that. What is a dragon? And in the West, we may imagine a dragon being a big four-legged lizardy creature, as I've shown. Well, it's behind me, isn't it? And it's got wings. It breathes fire. That one's not breathing fire. And in the East, though, the dragons are very different. We'll talk about this in spring. There's an Eastern dragon that they revere. It's got no fire, no wings. Does have the four legs, though, but it's extremely intelligent and very wise and very much linked with water. So a lot of the well mythology and folklore we got here tends to be a little bit dragon-like, but I'll be talking about that really in the spring. Now, dragons and serpent stories that I know bring up something familiar. There you go. You see those in storybooks a lot, don't you? But these stories that I've known from childhood onwards, and it features dragons living in caves, certainly hoarding treasure, breathing fire onto anyone that comes near to them. But in those Western stories, I feel that the dragons, monsters, and serpents, some of them are tamed by heroes, aren't they? Or overcome. But there's, it's the whole thing of hero, either I've killed the dragon. I'm a bit skeptical about that. But stories of fiery dragons and serpents today seem to be very set in Western traditions and influence. We, through Europe, UK over here, we love the fiery dragons. We don't hear so much of the water dragons like the Orient and the Middle East does. And it seems a lot of storytelling imagery of dragons here has been inspired by dinosaur skeletons. And someone is letting me know. Let's see. Are we? Is this someone who's not seeing, or I hope you're seeing? All right. Okay. All right. That doesn't matter. That's not the problem with the broadcast. I gather you're seeing and hearing me. I always pick that up because I sometimes ignore it. I know the signal is down a bit, so we hope that comes back up. Anyway, I was talking about the dinosaur discoveries, and it seems that some early archaeologists thought they had uncovered dragons when they got these dinosaurs that they were found. But it's more likely people reading their reports of their excavations of these dinosaurs. First thing people do is imagine dragons. You go to a Natural History Museum, say in London, the Natural History Museum, and you see these massive dinosaurs there. Children absolutely love it, and it has quite an impact, and certainly it was for me as a wee child going into that museum. And you imagine that they are dinosaurs. Well, no, of course they're dinosaurs. You imagine they're dragon. First thing I imagined was fire coming out of them and chasing everything around. Anyway, the origin of the dragon word, perhaps better go into, it seems to come from a Greek word, drakon. And that describes a scaly serpent. But in the Greek interpretation, interestingly, that's more a water creature with scales. And I think I've got something to illustrate something of the Greek way of looking at this. Greek water and scales. There you go. Maybe that's a little bit of the Greek image there. That is actually from a Greek story. It seems like Adam and Eve, but I believe that's Greek interpretation. And then the Romans, who copied the Greeks a lot, they got draconem, and that means the same thing. So I think I better get up some words here. And so far so good. Screen is now doing its jumping around, so I'll try and catch up with it. It's not too serious this time, but anyway. This is some spellings that'll be going. Yeah, sorry, screen is doing its thing. There we go. It'll come there. And Dracon, and let's get to some. Yes, sorry about that. We were going so well, and we decided to. Right, there we go. I'm back to me again. Now, the Romans, as I said, they used the word dracomem to mean the same thing. And I had a request by one of the viewers to talk about the dragon spirits of the Tuatha De Danann. But I'm going to leave most of that out today because the variations of those stories are incredible. And as I say earlier, I'm trying to avoid the battle stories as much as possible. And the stories I know of the dragon and the Tuatha De Danann, it's almost as if that is we're going to win our battles. You know, it really brings out the more ferocious side of the Tuatha De Danann stories. So I'm cutting them out because the ones I know, a lot of them about battles, acquisitions, and heroes, and some of them are about Danube, the people of the Danube, but some of them about this lad from the Middle East called Dan. So anyway, I might bring it up another time, but not today. To me, a lot of those Tuatha De Danann dragon stories are a bit like Game of Thrones type of things. I'm a bit more monastic than that. I think that's what it is, just personal choice. But despite saying that, I have one wee Tuatha De Danann related battle story coming up, so that's something to look forward to. Now, another thing, as I mentioned with Greek and Roman origins of the dragon word, there's probably no dragon word during the Tuatha De Danann period because the Greek and Roman word interpretations. Oh, I have to remember to keep close to this screen to stop this going. I wonder if I actually increase light, it'll do something. I'm going to increase the light a bit. Oh no, that switches it off completely. Let's see if I can get a bit more. Let's see if that helps with stopping the flecking. Anyway, as I say, the words related to dragon we know weren't around in Tuatha times, so I think that's interesting. But when the Saxons came to Britain, they adopted something similar to the Greeks because they had the word Draco or Draka, and I think I've got those. I'll bring those back up with the banner. There we go. Still haven't got rid of that fleck, have I? Anyway, no, it hasn't come up yet. There we go. Draco and Dragon. They gave the creature fire anyway. But there's an actual Saxon word for a fire serpent that is a worm. And there's the variations on worm eventually. Yes, worm. There you go. And I'm going to be talking about those place names. There's two variations on the worm name. But to get back to pictures, please. There we go. Well, there's a worm. There's one interpretation of a worm. It looks like a dragon, doesn't it? There's other worm things that look even more horrific, so I'm not going to bring those pictures up. But that's the second word. Saxons talked about worms. And I talk about worm kind of characters in Irish folklore, of the characters underground. And we talk about the symbiosis underground and the relationship of roots and fungi and trees and everything underground. And it's said that the worms keep this all together. So that's for other nature folklore times. But some English place names, as I was saying, they include the name worm. And I'll show a few of those. There's Warminster, which a lot of people think is to do with war because it's right by where a huge area where the UK military kind of rehearse their battle games, but it's nothing to do with that. Warminster is actually the sacred hill of the dragon, or the sacred hill of the worm, which is actually just outside Warminster. It's really big. And then there's Warmalow, which is in Herefordshire. I used to live near there when I did a little contract, and it's a pretty place. And there's a beautiful native woodland forest there. But this was actually known as being the resting place, or the mound, the burial mound of the dragon or the worm. And that's very close to the Welsh border. So there's a bit of Welsh mythology. And then there's Wormley Woods. Wormley itself is a kind of a village in Hertfordshire. Small town now. It's expanded. But the native woodland forest is massive. Loads of walks. And that's the woodland of the dragon, the Wormley anyway. So it seems that Saxons who brought the mythology of the fiery serpents, they brought them really actually as a symbol of purification and the overcoming of the dark side and dark season, dark side of ourselves, dark season of the cycle. And so as Samhain and through winter, this is the dragon, the fiery dragon is a wonderful symbol of our own transformation and the land transformation that's going to go on through the winter. But sadly in stories, the dragon symbols are also used as symbols of fear, of hate, revenge and death. So that's what I'm going to try and avoid today, is those. But there was and some people would know about the 1066 battle of William the Conqueror and Harold, who lost his eye. And Harold is said to have confronted King William with a flag of Draco, and that is a reproduction apparently from 1066. But it's worth telling a bit about the ancient dragon of ancient Babylon. So I'm going to move on to that now. Tiamat, woman, a lady dragon, and she was created and born from the sea. And this is a lovely Mesopotamian Babylonian creation story. You're probably very familiar of it, of some form anyway. But as soon as she appeared on the surface of the sea, she was slain by the sky god Marduk, or Marduk. And there she is on the left, and Marduk on the right. And once he's slain, they go into battle, as I say, Skydog. And once he's slain Tiamat, it said that he used his body to create the land And the land that was created was the original land that they say around Babylonia, Eden, Mesopotamia, all that. And then Marduk became human on that land. And it's a story that's really been expanded a lot through many millennia of folklore. You probably know your own versions, but the sky god Marduk ended up being the human god of Babylon. And that's him slaying the serpent again. But stories tell of this Babylon Marduk forming an allegiance with other Mesopotamian and Persian gods, as long as he was the main god. And eventually he said to have been the one that enforced the idea of the one and only god. And this was the allegiance, it said, with the other gods was to actually fight and destroy any other female serpents that may approach them. Not only Tiamat, but he feared that there were other serpents who were powerful, and this allegiance of these gods was to stop this happening and stopping these female serpents of the water taking over the land. And this is perhaps the earliest story of patriarchy trying to overthrow a potentially powerful realm of the matriarchy. So this was also the time, of course, at the start of the alehouse wives stories that I've been doing. I've got part 3 on Wednesday that I have been sharing. So they're very much hand in hand, and the actual scribing of these stories from Mesopotamia are from about the same time as well. So I wish I had more time to share Marduk and Tiamat's stories. It's a much more epic creation story than the biblical Genesis. There's a few of your comments of coming up, so I'll break for that. There we go. I'm going to have to listen to the replay, says Breezy. Busy afternoon ahead. I think that's true with a lot of Ireland, because it's just a lovely day out. So some people are actually watching this with their chores or lazing around outside on a Sunday afternoon. But Sharon, thanks for joining us, and Terry Slack, good morning. I'm glad you're joining us. Thanks very much appreciated. So it's told that Marduk was the first builder of temples too. Let's get him onto some temple stuff here. It was temples with spires, and no, frozen. There we go. Very much temples with spires was his thing, and that's an old Babylonian style spire, and they were built in various places. And also it said that he created the first weathercock to show wind direction. And if you're in astrology, you may have heard that the origins of astrology came from Babylon, from the Chaldeans. Marduk is said to be the person who was the inventor who calculated the 12 astrological signs, and there's some ancient pictorials of that. So he invented the chart as such. So that's one picture I got of that, and that's another one. So he's the sort of father of the astrology in a way. And all of this stuff has been extracted from the scribed Sumerian tablets, Mesopotamian tablets. And the stories of Gia, the Earth Mother ones that are spread a lot today, they tend to have originated from stories of the female dragon Tiamat. And Marduk, the steeple builder, as I say, he rose claiming that he was the single god himself. Though he was forming these allegiances, and as he claimed to be a single god himself, he became a serpent and a dragon too. He transformed from sky god into a land god, and now here he is as a dragon to spread the word that he is the one and only god. And that was the origin of these one and only god religions starting to kick in with the what's that Iranian religion? The Zoroastrians, so forth. Anyway, this mythology moved west, and so hence, I suppose, there's been the human continuity of the battle of the sexes, as we call it, and perhaps we can call it the battle of the dragons. But the Murdoch Church of one god dragon building a human culture of doctrines, rules, and order versus the Tiamat dragon's approach to nature, connection to nature, and all its chaos flow, and the goddess. So there's what we got: the steeple builders versus the circle people. That's the way I tend to look at it. When I was a child, a lot of the children at that time, there was a lot of B movies, cowboys and Indians. And it wasn't long after the Second World War as well. So, of course, there was the English and the Jerrys. But a very common thing was the cowboys and the Indians. And, of course, the cowboys, we find the Indians, in come the cavalry, wipe out the Indians. And the white lads, the cowboys, they cheer. And, of course, all my friends, they wanted to be the cowboys. You know, they were the heroes. And, you know, that was what they wanted to be when they grew up, was be heroes. I was the only one that wanted to be an Indian. And I always thought of that time, what's going on here? There's a division. I didn't like the idea of the division. And one of the things that came to my mind, and I was very young, maybe as young as 5 at this time, that, you know, the whole, you wouldn't think so with the redneck culture now, but I always thought, you know, the white people, they're Babylonian. I knew about Babylonian from family. You know, they're the scientists. But look at the Indians connected to the earth. Everything is in cycles and circles. They're the artists. And so I went through many years thinking that the human race was divided between artists and scientists. And I wanted to be on the artist side. Funny things we went through. And of course, we're going through that. Let's see. There's Kate's here. Just arrived. Good morning. And Austin Bergen via the YouTube. Thank you for this. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'll move along as I can. There is a lot. I think I'll be extending again, but I'm going to be talking about these long sessions as well. But excuse me. But as the female Tiamat culture reached what's Eastern Europe, let's give a good picture of her again. We had vanished. She vanished. The Celtic Dragon. Tiamat became the Celtic Dragon image once she got to Eastern Europe. And people have probably heard of the Celtic Dragon, but it seems very vague. But there's a similar Norse tale of to the Tiamat and Murdoch tales as told of a serpent who's not actually female, he's a male, but comes out of the sea, is Ymir. Rising out the sea there, and there's Odin about to try and kill off Ymir as well. So there's some parallels with that. And you may well know that there's a strong association with dragons to whales as well. Sorry about the hoarseness again. Let's hope the water does it. But one ancient word for dragon or serpent is gwibber. But they also have an alternative word that's D-R-A-I-G, drug, and that's get some spellings up for you for that. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. They're the Welsh words for the dragon. And if you didn't know what I was talking about, Tim and Murdoch, they have that there. But I'm on to gwibber and drug now with the Welsh words. Now I've got the Welsh dragon behind me, of course. But when Wales was ancient Britain, part of ancient Britain, the Eastern ancient Britain tribes, they were bringing in Saxons, a bit like the Leinster people once upon a time. They brought in the Normans to increase their power and strength so they could take over the high kingship of Tara. And this was going on because the southeast of Britain was where the fertile lands were. And the people of the Britain tribes from Wales and the north, they wanted these fertile lands because that's where the wealth was. That's where it would stop the hunger, that type of thing. And there was Vortigan. Vortigan, that's in the 5th century, king of the Britons. The king of the Britons, especially in the West. And there's a bit of an image of him there. And he objected to the growing Saxon intrusion that was being encouraged by these Eastern chieftains. And the stories tell of Vortigan summoning his druid, and we know him as Merlin. And then we bring Merlin in as well. And so he was summoned to sort it all out and stop the Eastern Britain Saxons coming in and stopping that alliance that was going on. And so Merlin, he summoned the Red Dragon. And if you remember the Merlin series and the dragon, that's an artist impression of that. That's not direct from the BBC, but that's the one who painted an image from that BBC series. And so the Red Dragon was to appear and to be the defending spirit of the Britons to try and push away the Saxons. And I got some more pictures. Here's Merlin, another Merlin and the dragon. That's a very sort of oldish inscription there. He's kind of getting the dragon on his side. And then, of course, there is the one behind me, the beautiful red dragon, which is very much the Welsh thing as well. So there we go. But Saxon Druid, now present on the Britain soil, the Saxons had to bring one in. And that was said to be a white dragon. And so we had the white dragon versus the red dragon of the Western Britons. And there we go. And and I said, I'm going to have a little bit of fighting here. So their white dragon and the red dragon. And I assume, unfortunately, because the way that people in Wales, and my history teacher used to say, they were just all the Britons were pushed up into the mountains again. And they formed Wales and of course, Cornwall, and some of them came over to Ireland. And so I assume the white dragon there won for a while. So to restore peace, Merlin then went off to visit Uther Pendragon, who was the kind of Saxon chieftain that had integrated in with the Britons. I'm not sure which way it went round, whether it was Uther that actually formed the alliance with the Saxons. Maybe you know history better than me. Anyway, every time I see that man, I always think I should be asking for a cup of coffee. If you remember those advertisements, I cannot see that man in any drama without thinking of Taster's Choice coffee and stuff like that. Anyway, he's Arthur's father. Let's give it. But he has, if you can see clearly, his crown there has dragons on the bits that point up. They do have dragons because that's always that's pretty much what his name is saying. He wears a helmet of dragons. But this is another artist's impression, which has probably more the snarly face that Uther Pendragon would have. But I don't know if that thing on the top of his head is a dragon or not. Anyway, because Uther wore gold helmets with his dragon designs on them, there we have it. Oh, I'm losing the business here. Let's see if I can get more light on. What's happening is the outdoor light is going. Let's get some more. Let's try and get rid of a bit of more brightness. There we go. But there are dragon stories in Ireland, but there does not seem to be the deep ancient link to them as they are with the Saxons and the Norse. And I'm going to try and change my background a bit, if you excuse me for a second. Just playing with this new idea. Let's see what I got. We're going to talk about these guys. Now, do I have to? There we go. I have to move myself over. There we go. The going to have some Vikings up now. So that's I'm going to use that. I'm just playing with the toys here. Anyway, as I say, Saxons and Norse very much into their dragons. But the same is so in Gaelic Scotland as well. And this is particularly so with the Picts. The Pict symbols, look at the top there, you see a dragon symbol. This is kind of pre-Orm, or this is what inspired the Orm carvings. And as I've talked about in some of the Owen sessions, I think actually the Orm is more likely to have come from Wales through a Pictish type of culture, maybe Cornwall, before it actually was used in Ireland. But that's controversial. Anyway, the Pict symbols here is what you will see in Aberdeenshire, Moray, up in Caithness, and also Argyll was Gaelic Scotland, very different, and the Hebrides as well. So there wasn't really the serpent symbols out that way. I'm trying to get to this is one here that's in Aberdeenshire. Well, that isn't actually the stone, but I've shown it various times. I'm trying to remember the Brandybutt stone. That's it. It's the Brandybutt stone That's a few miles outside of Aberdeen. Anyway, there's a lot of cultural association with the Picts and the ancient Britain tribes and the Welsh. There's a lot of exchanges with it, because I think the Picts either went up from the Britons or they came down. But they were tribal. As tribes move, tribes take on a different culture and become different. Dragons in Gaelic languages. Well, there is a vowel change. It's either dragon with a U or dragon with an A. But serpents are more likely to be featured. It's more about serpents in Ireland. And the word for that is pronounced differently. In Hebrides and Argyll, we're known as nacha. I don't know what the Irish is nacha. Someone will tell, and there's probably regional variations on that. But that's picture of the nacha that rose up in the seas on the west of Argyll. Anyway, dragons came into medieval scribing language, as scholars probably know, because it was scribing that brought about the idea of scholars. And there is a dragon inspiring a scholar there. And this was from about 6th century this started to happen. So assume that they included putting serpenty type images into their scribing to draw some recognition of authority to the information that they were archiving. And the scribes, they were certainly inspired by the dragon symbols of the Saxons. Look at this. I think it's from Book of Kells. And there's a bit of a serpenty thing scribed in there. Isn't that beautiful? And you've probably seen that if you've been to Trinity College, that type of thing. And also as I've got in the background here, the longboats there with their dragon's heads. And the idea of that, I say, of course, people would see the sail, but if people didn't know Vikings and Norse people, and they saw that coming across the sea, they'd probably think, oh, it was a big dragon coming towards them with a big handkerchief behind or something. But certainly the last thing they were thinking of was a boat full of horned men and coming to pillage and all the stuff it said they did. Anyway, scary thing to have that coming towards your shore. Now, another use of dragon symbolism, and I love this, and it's not a very clear picture. It was on medieval wall frescoes, and this is actually inside the abbey. It's a lovely little abbey on Clare Island, and the frescoes there, I find, are a lot clearer and a lot more interesting than what's up in the Rock of Cashel. So if you can go over to Clare Island and get to the abbey and find a key, I think the post office now has the key for that. It's worth going in. Fantastic, all the frescoes there, and especially the dragons. There's harps there as well. But my favorite story of Ireland, dragon story, I'm going to have to say a disclaimer first, because I'm getting an increasing policing by various university and wannabe university scholars, claiming a lot of this content I'm sharing on Nature Folklore is total BS. And there's an increasing doctrine that if content is not recorded there by the medieval scribe manuscripts or in the ducas.ie collection, which is absolutely fabulous. Go spend as much time as you can on ducas.ie. But there is this thought that if it's not there, the story doesn't exist, so it's not authentic. But my own sources, those people who scribe, they had to get from oral sources anyway. And my own sources that I share, they're really from memory from storytellers of over 65 years now. Because when a storyteller tells me a story, I don't know what it is. I think it's the enchantment of the story. Do you find that when someone tells you a story, you actually live that story? It's almost, these days, people are putting these virtual reality helmets on. But to me as a child, before there was virtual reality, it was like putting that helmet on. And I'd be in the story. And you get very emotional with the story. And I think when you get emotional over stuff, we remember our emotions. We remember what we feel. The last thing I think we remember is the stuff we were told to memorize at school. Do you remember that? So the stuff that's in books, stuff that's scribed down, they don't hit to me. For some reason, I don't get that virtual reality helmet response from books like a lot of people do. To me, it has to be the storyteller. And the real storyteller, YouTube does it to a certain degree, and I think YouTube is less and less now, because you're just getting into that enchanted story, bang, there's an advert, and you're getting an advert every 20 seconds on YouTube. It's worse than commercial television. So it has to be the real storyteller, and that's what I adapt my stories from. And these stories, the storytellers have adapted to their own locality. And that's why perhaps there's a similarity from Iranian and Babylonian, Mesopotamia stories. They're told in Eastern Europe, they're told in the North, they're told here, but they get changed to fit in with the local characters and local place names. And I feel that these medieval scribe records are fiction anyway. It's all storytelling. And my old Chinese boss I'd bring up every now and again used to say that it's not the ingredients and the components that nourish us. It's the unspeakable, invisible presence that holds everything together. So that's why I say I don't believe in facts. I think facts are fiction. It's that stuff that holds it together that is so essential in our purpose, encouragement, and understanding. Well, I'm getting a bit lectury now anyway. So the stories that I tell here, I've pieced together from stories I've heard. This story I'm about to tell you, I got this from a member of Tom Regan Church. It's worth visiting. I forgot to put up a photo of this. It's in Ballyconnell in Cavan. And the Tom Regan stone is actually inside the church as you walk in. And that is a sculptured, I think, 6th century, 7th century recreation of this character, main character of the story I'm about to tell. And also parts of this story I got from in a youth hostel in Strabane. We had a little bit of a storytelling session. It was in the 70s, 73, 74. So I got a bit from that. And also a lovely storyteller that I used to visit sometimes, Ardra, and during the 80s, and a lot of stuff from him. I don't think I got any of this from Michael Quirk. I think Michael hasn't talked to this one. But anyway, this is a time when the Tuatha De Danann was spoken of as being farmers, especially the women being farmers. And they said the Fomorians at that time that they were sea people. And of course, I dispute that. But it said that they came ashore. They tried to enchant the beautiful women with the gold rings that they had. So they'd offer them the gold rings that somehow they made. And I think the Fomorians were pretty good at mining and making these things. And they traded with them. They traded with their metals. So they tried to lure these women into copulation, of course. This is what the lads do, isn't it? And through that copulation, the women would give birth to children, of course. And the daughters that were born through this mating, they were left behind to continue the work on the farms. But the sons were then taken out to sea to be with the rest of the Fomorian men. And you might have heard stories of Iceland being an island of all men. And it's said that that's where the Fomorians came ashore and be men, something like that. Anyway, but one of these Fomorian men on the lurch, he said that he was called Draken. And look at this dramatic artist impression. Is that what a Fomorian looked like? There we go. There's an impression of Draken. And he was trying to woo the Tuatha De Danann woman called Groinia. Could you imagine any woman being wooed like that? I suppose some women like really good bikers, don't they? But there we go. That's an illustration of Groinia, beautiful woman Groinia there. But obviously, she's named the woman of the first harvest, which I don't have a picture of. Anyway, that's Groinia, the goddess of the first harvest. Now, at the time of Draken approaching Groinia, she'd lost her husband to death, and together they only had daughters. They didn't have any son heirs. So she had taken over the position of being a chieftain. However, after telling you these stories of the alehouse wives women, I've given you two parts of that. I wonder if Groinia was actually a courageous alehouse wife. Yeah, I'm starting to speculate the two together, and this is where people accuse me of the BS. But it's like I think this whole mythology is like a jigsaw puzzle, and we attempt to put things together, and then when we do, we try and see if there's some evidence of it. Anyway, Groinia was taking no nonsense from this lusting Draken the Fomorian, so they ended up in a battle. So here's my battle story. And Grania, she slayed Draken, she cut off his head, cut off his arms, and then left his torso out for the birds and the animals to eat. Now, if any of you have been over to Boer Island and you see the Janus figure there, they have the Janus figure with the head, almost like skull-like head, and it's got these crossed arms, doesn't it? Oh, I can't do it on the screen. And it's like that. And that's the arms, actually. You know, actually, it's was it arms? No, it was legs. I'm telling the story wrong. That's actually legs that were put over the torso. And the rest of the torso, the animals were eating that. But after a few days later, Gronia returned, buried what was left of Draken's torso, then put his skull over the torso, and then with his 2 chopped off legs, put them over his skull, and that was to ensure his spirit went right through to the other underground realm and didn't hang around on Earth, causing to be a pest and causing problem with the other women. But there's 2 sets of mythologies and traditions that have developed from this incident, and I regret that the first image I've lost, and perhaps it doesn't exist much. But I was quite intrigued when I saw an old Ulster flag, an image of the Ulster flag that had a skull in the middle of the cross. But what you get now is the hand. So any of you historians who can enlighten me on this, was there a skull there, or is that an artist impression? But it does go wrong with the story. And it seems to fit very nicely, not only with the Janus figure on Boer Island, but if you go around Lower Loch Earn there, into the graveyards, and in various places, you'll see that same symbol with the skull, with the cross over it, and the legs. Anyway, I'll go beyond that. The Patrick flag is like that as well, without the hand, just the red cross, the red X. But the Knights Templar, when they went to sea, they adopted something similar. And they have the Jolly Rouge. And there's the Jolly Rouge. And that's starting to look familiar, isn't it? And that's, it's fainted there, but that was supposed to be a gold skull and crossbones, but they somehow got faded, but on a red background. That's a tapestry version. And they especially flew this for protection when they went to sea, especially when they fled from La Rochelle after the Hospitallers and the French were trying to take their wealth and just get rid of them. And then the British Navy adopted a similar flag that you're very familiar with. And that's supposed to be an example. But the skull and crossbones there on the black background was actually first used by the British Navy to announce that they were on a Save Our Souls mission, SOS, mercy mission, very similar to lifeboat missions today, or at least something humanitarian. So people at sea would have respect for them and let them go. But of course, we had these bold pirates who'd come up with something like that to get, and they mimic that flag to try and get close to boats, because boats trusted the Save Our Souls flag, but then these pirates came close, tricked them, and they'd rob them, take the crews of slaves, and so forth. So that's how we got from that story to the skull and crossbones of pirates. Now, the other story from the Draken and Groine story is better known, and it takes on a bit of a patriarchal twist, because Groine, as the story was told, became George, and Draken became Dragon. And so the quest then became the seizing of gold rings, because I was saying that Draken had gold rings. And so the quest is to take the gold rings, there's some in the corner there, to take them away from Draken, take the gold rings away from the dragon. And of course, the earliest St. George stories, some of them say that he actually just killed the dragon to protect women, because the women were devoured by dragons. And there he is, he's killing off a dragon there and saving a woman that definitely looks as if she thinks she's going to be about devoured, doesn't she? So anyway, the savior of women was how the story sort of galloped through after that. But Though some people interpret the Georgian dragon story, really they interpret it as another form of what I said earlier, the red and white dragon battle of the Saxons versus the Welsh, inspired by Merlin, and even that earlier one of the one-good pointy church versus the more sort of connection to earth, the goddess thing, and of course yin and yang. The whole yin and yang is very much related to that. So it's amazing. It's a philosophy that gets spread through stories in different ways. Anyway, I did add snakes into the title. I'm not really going to add to that to this session. That's going to be more in the spring, I think. Anyway, let's see. I haven't seen what you've been saying. And let's excuse my screen is get my screen back in order. Davina, she's here. Hello. I hope you get to the beginning. There we go. Good point, Linda. The children who record the stories in Dukas were scholars. I suppose I'm a scholar in that way, because of course they picked up stories. They were told by the school, go out to schools, go out and pick up the stories. But what a lovely project that is. They got the stories off their parents, what they heard in the village and the relations and so forth, and friends and relations friends. A bit like what I did, but I didn't do it as a school project, although the school did encourage that type of thing as well. And then Ostenberg says, we're still listening, busy listening. Thank you very much that I still have you. And we even have Seven Serpents here. Hello to Seven Serpents. Glad you can make it, and I hope you're agreeing with some of the stuff that I'm saying here. So fantastic that you joined us. Brilliant. There we go. Maybe you got some, I'm sure you got some brilliant stories yourself, even why you call yourself Seven Serpents. So if you want to give a sentence or two of that, that'd be fabulous. So what is a serpent anyway? I've been talking dragon language. This is beautiful. This is actually from Hazelwood outside of Sligo. I haven't got the other pictures, but for a while it looked like a dragon out in Loch Gill. And each time we visited over a period of about 10 years, it was getting closer and closer and closer to the shore. And this was its final end. And it got washed ashore. And right there by a rooted, that's not hazel, I think that's a rooted beach. So I think that's just, I'm so proud of getting that picture. I think it's fun. Anyway, that's my interpretation of what is a serpent. It comes from the Latin serpens, serpens, which means crawling animal. Snakes, as I say, I'm going to leave those to spring, because the snake imagery is really related to fertility, whereas the serpent is regarded as transformation, or in the one God steeple church, it's sin. It's you talk about serpents, you're talking about something very sinful. Is this a sinful serpent? Yeah, there you go. There's one very sinful serpent there. So look at that. Eyes full of sin there. So after the imagery of a dragon, serpent, snake is that of sin, evil, and the devil. What have I got here? No, that wasn't what I'm going to show, but there we go. That's the interpretation. If you've got a serpent or a snake or a little lizard going around, that is what some church people think is going through your head. Anyway, one thought. Had the concept of Satan actually formed during the time of Adam and Eve? That's something I doubt as well. That's something that's quite muddling. It's like what I'm always saying about here is how ancient cyclical celebrations have been going on with humans for thousands of years suddenly are applied to the modern calendar, the Gregorian calendar from 16th century. What's that all about? Hey, let's see what else. A comment or two come up. Ann Bowden is around. Hello from Pennsylvania. Good to see you. And I see I'm losing my line. Sorry about the fleckly. there it goes. One bit of extra light. The light's dimming, so a little bit more light, and suddenly all the flickly goes. Is it time for me to actually change my background? Because I'm loving the fun of change. I'm going to put more green screen options. This is going to be relevant to what I'm doing. And I don't know where that cave is, but I love that. It's almost, you go into a cave and it's like entering perhaps into a dragon's interior. So I'll keep that up for as my background for a little while. So there we go. One of my favorite stories is the local story of the Grand Conception at the point of midwinter. Now, I need to go back to my earlier disclaimer of this, because what I'm going into now is probably not as from any ancient scribe text. It's a dragon story that's told around here, and it's a side dish to the many variations of the Morrigan mating story, and they're well told around this time. But the one and only accepted, recognized story of Morrigan and the Dagda is in the Battle of Chura book, the Cathmach Chura, sorry, pronunciation, translated out of the Book of Invasions. But people have made various variations of that story. But the most accepted one, from what I gather, is the Whitley Stokes one. But even that one, it's funny that that's accepted, because his translation is criticized because he took out most of the XXX parts, the saucy bits. He took that out of his translation, but that's the accepted one. Now but the annual Morrigan and Dagda romances, they go on. They happen every year. It says they were a married couple anyway. Anyway, to share my compilation of the dragon side dish of this story, my sources have been local storytellers around here. That even an archaeologist lives the other side of Caish, and there's a bit of Michael Quirk in here as well. But anyway, let's get to the location, which I did slip it in accidentally. The caves here on the hill of Caish. There you go. A lot of you be familiar with them and visited them. And there you start going into the big cave there. But there is a legend that beyond the caves, deep into the hill, you may see a mythological inner lock, just like that. That's not from Caish, but that's the best photo I could get to illustrate the idea that's told in the story. Now, within this lock, stories tell of a fluctuating fire in the center of it, and this is my own artist impression of that. But I'm going to be talking about folklore cooking next Wednesday in the final Witch's Cauldron and Ale story, and this is actually very related. Now, this folklore fire in the center of this inner lock is told of as drawing Doida or Dagda to his mate, the hag, the Morrigan, every year. I tend to speak of them more on the Coracue because of the more the great, the Corrie, because the Corrie has a lot of interpretations. It can be a valley, it can be a cooking pot, it can be a cauldron, and it can actually be the hollow inside of a mountain. So the Corrie there, and the Ku being the protector. So generally the protector and the transformation through winter. But as I say, I'm told this bit's not authentic. Stick to the script, John. Anyway, I'm going to carry on with this because I even move it from Samhain into the midwinter time, the solstice. And the tale I hear about this is midwinter, the Grand Conception time, as I call it. And so I got a few versions. I do actually tell quite a few versions. I'm not going to tell my midwinter one till more midwinter. But I meet children. Children love to go up to those caves, show you the caves again. They love to go up there and explore them. And it's amazing how many of those children I meet, they've got their dragon stories. They've been told by someone locally. And And sometimes they come up to me and say, tell me a dragon story, please. So they ask me for dragon stories and they want to swap their dragon stories. It's a lovely thing. It happens quite often going up to the Hero of Caish because teachers, parents have told them dragon stories. And one common story is the Fiery Dragon and Serpents is that, they're told of. And this is what the children understand. They're guardians. I talked about them more in the Coracue, the guardian. And so children tend to not be scared. They're not fear-mongered. They love the kind of excitement of the dragon and the serpent. But they also view it as being the local guardian. And as long as the dragon is there, all is going to be well around Caish. So they see that as the guardian of nature, and we'll have plenty of water. We'll always be fed. It'll keep the disease away. So there's a lovely faith, a local faith around the dragon here. And it's just lovely to hear the children talk about that. What have I got here? Water guardians. There's an artist's impression of a water guardian, what it was. So that one. So I'm going to touch on one story that has many variations. But I'll expand in the story during other Sawan editions. So I've got a few more Sawan stories. So I might come back to that again. Let's see. It is the dinosaur capital of the world. Travel. I'll put that up a bit later as well. Thank you very much. Let's see. Have you heard from John Heller in Alberta? More dinosaurs have been found there than anywhere on Earth, which is fantastic. Davina loves the green screen. I'm glad you're enjoying that as well. Thank you. Right, time is moving on. I'm into the overtime now. But perhaps the most famous local dragon or serpent story, she comes under different names, and I haven't put the names up for the spelling yet anyway. But this is Ellentrakken is one of the names. Ellentrakken. I haven't got a picture of her. I probably will soon. Or Ellentrakken. Different spellings. Ellen, Aillen, or maybe ELL, follow EN, Trakken. Anyway, the basic story is that Ellen, we'll call her Ellen anyway. She comes out of the Ornagot cave in County Roscommon at Samhain night. Some people will say Halloween night. And when she comes out, her job is to go around the country, and she burns up all the waste and what's remaining from harvested land, and spreads her fire. And so she's a sort of a dragon that comes out at Sawan and just goes around the country and burns everything, because that's the end of the season. It's the burn, ready for the transformation. There are bonfires, aren't there, everywhere. And it says she's helped to do this with goblins and copper red birds. I don't have a picture of goblins and copper red birds, so I'm going to put that up because there's some red in it. But I find this to be her story. Ellen's story is an amazing parallel to Santa's helpers. Santa off in the sky with his elves and flying reindeer. And to me, that kind of reminds me a bit of Ellen up into the sky as a dragon and pouring fire into these places around Ireland. And Ellentrakken is also told as being a fiery three-headed creature. And that's a bit of an impression. There she is as a three-headed creature. There's no fire coming out there, but people are very scared. But she's in the story, she's told to blast extreme aggression towards Amamaker up in the north, up in Ulster there, which I'm going to be talking more of in future weeks. There's a nice aerial shot there. I think this is another one. I hope I'm right. Yeah, that's another one that people have done with their drones. And also the same towards the Hill of Tara. I don't have any pictures, but the Talatka. And I'm going to be talking about that for those places in the next couple of weeks. Because all these three places, they're places of Sawan firelighting. And so there is that story that Ellen came along and she started the fires. So it's all links with that. Now there's another Ellen story, and I love this one. She went underground. There's the one that got entrance. I'll go into it more when I tell the story more, but there was a reason. She felt ugly and disconnected. Nobody wanted to see her. So she ended up going down into the Ornagot cave, and there she transformed into being a dragon. There's variations how that happened. And so you go through that hole there, which is a hawthorn bush above. That's the roots of the hawthorn. And then as you go down deeper, you go down and down, and then you come out with this big sort of cathedral underground. So that's where she went. And it said that she actually kept traveling underground, and she came up under the Cache Hill, and I told you about that lock. And there's the hidden lock there. And when Ellen came up, that she was the Felukka, that flame that came up out into the water, the flame of conception. But it's also said that the Morrigan and the Morna Coracua blessed a dragon fire. It put it out, and it became the water that became the new fertility of the land the following spring. And it said that some of Ireland's rivers came out of the Hill of Cache as serpents, and the serpents actually cut out the land, and then this water then flowed out every spring through these streams, through the rivers, and also up through the Turlocks. But I'm going to talk about that more in Nature Folklore. I think for this, it's enough to say that the Ellen's fire was transformed into water that came out in the spring through the serpents then. And that's why we have got water serpents in spring and fire serpents and dragons for now. Anyway, what else we got? There's a few more comments coming up. I hope it's all making sense. Is there it's now. It's a shame I haven't pulled your picture up, Davina, because I got a picture of you going into that cave, and I think I've told the story of that. I think was it last year? It was very droughty, or the year before. It must have been 2 years ago. It was very droughty. And you went up into that, Davina, that cave where there's that little river that's coming out. And shame I haven't got the pictures of that. It's very similar to the backdrop I got here. That it really shows how the caves are very feminine. And it's a cave that not many people go up to when they go into the caves. But I will be showing those in later folklore sessions. But yes, there's that little waterfall that came what looked like a vulva of the caves, a vulva of the hill, and out came this water. Well, that dried up. So we climbed up, and we could climb up actually in through the vulva when the river wasn't going. And when you got into that crack, one time we went up there, we actually saw what looked like a little lock. We actually saw the edges of the lock. And then when we went up the next time, because of the drought, that lock had gone. It was just stone. So it really piqued me for believing, yes, there is a lock inside, and it is very hollow. It's limestone, so very hollow. So yes, it's a combination of mythology and folklore that there is a lock there. It's very symbolic. But I tend to believe, yes, there are swallow holes at the top of the Cache Hill. There could well be a lock, because there's another lock, and that's where we get our water from. We have a group water scheme here, and our water is lovely. We don't have the Boyle water orders that Ballymote and Boyle and Gurchin and all these other people have that are under Irish water. We've got our own glorious water from the Cache Hill. That's another blessed lock, and that's one of the loveliest things. And I'm going to miss that when I'm away from Carracrory, is that special water that we've got. Nessie. I'm not carrying Nessie on this one. I think I might in the spring one. I'm not sure, because Nessie is in the water. So I think he comes because Nessie, as far as I know in stories, doesn't actually breathe fire. One of the things was I mentioned with the dragons' heads of the Viking ships. That might have had something to do with it. But the one thing I've noticed when I did living on the Hebrides and surviving by shellfishing. You'd be out there on a remote island shellfishing, and up would come a bull seal to see what you're doing. And when the waters are rippling and you see a bull seal with those big whiskers, and you see all those ripples that look like a monster, if I'd had a few drinks, I wouldn't be surprised I'd come up with some Loch Ness stories. So that's why I'm thinking of it. And Tina Rock has just come along over my head with music studies. I hope you enjoy this later. But thanks for joining in. That's nice that we've actually got someone in Ireland that said stop by and said hello. Fantastic. Now, next topic. I'm a bit of a stuck needle with this one, but I hope you don't mind me bringing this up again, even though we're running into the overtime. It's the astrology side of this. And in astrology, the charting of the nodes, and that's our dragon's path. I love that. Through the astrology studies, it was said that we have the north node and the south node. And the south node, let's start with that. That's the umbilical cord that we're connected to the goddess, connected to the serpent, is the way the stories are told. Even though we have our umbilical cord cut, that spiritually, or in the she world, it's not cut. It's always there, connected to nature, connected to the earth. And that's what we were born with. That's the person and what we have. And then our entire life, and the astrology is supposed to map this, and of course this is Babylonian, that the north node is where we're going. It's where we're heading, where our life's heading. And it's very symbolic of our life's path. And the astrologers seem to ignore this a lot. And that's the symbols. There you go. The head of the dragon, tail of the dragon, north node and south node. A lot of astrologers, if you went to them from consulting, they'll whisk over it very quickly. They're very into the sun, moon, or ascendant, that type of stuff. But this, I find, is very powerful stuff. And in fact, I would say so many astrologers have put a lot of focus on stuff like Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. It's amazing how many focus on Pluto, just like a tennis ball on the outside. And they ignore the nodes. Anyway, I'm not going to go into an astrology lesson, but do look into the nodes. If you go to an astrologer, ask about the nodes. That's your dragon path. Anyway, Eastern astrologers, they focus on those nodes intensely. They really do. Anyway, that's the important part. Just ask for that if you ever get an astrology reading. Now, outside of the usual Jungian style of analysis of birth charts, they are our story path. Some people say that south node, I'll bring it up again, that's our past karma, and the north node is what we're heading towards. It's the karma that we repair and we change, and maybe it's the new karma that we dig up for ourselves. Anyway, our future karma to be dealt with. So that's our adventure, that's our wilding, but I'm not going to go into any more on nodes and astrology. And for some reason, I pulled this symbol up, but that's really the three phases of feminism, isn't it? The maiden, mother, and crone. So I think one more thing to go into after that is the Kundalini. My Chinese, and there we go. Of course, thanks for reminding Sherry that dragons are also a Chinese symbol. And so we have one on board, as well as 7 serpents being here. We have Sherry, the water dragon, here. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thanks for bringing that one up. So anyway, Kundalini. I invite people to give a Kundalini talk. So because I wouldn't say I'm the wisest person on the Kundalini philosophy, but I'll give you a quick go anyway. Maybe someone will talk on this another time when we do this. So anyway, here's a symbol, Kundalini symbol, 2 serpents there. So Kundalini, a goddess described as a sleeping serpent. And there I showed that, like the school children with the dragon in the hill, and other people are thinking that the hag is there, and other people are thinking the Morrigan is there, other people are thinking the Mona Coracule is there. So all of those is the curled up serpent that is the goddess. And curled up 3.5 times. Now, do I have a 3.5 times curled up? No, I don't, but I got a coiled up serpent here that was engraved. Yeah, you would say that was 3.5 times, wouldn't you? There you go. So there we go, around the base. And that's around the base of the spine, the first chakra. And then her name from the word kundala, meaning coiled in Hindu, but it's also linked to Persian and maybe Babylonian words, and also linked to the Tiamat Babylonian dragon, as well as the Siberian shamans. But Tiamat, I think, has a lot to do with that. And then that coiled serpent goddess uncoils into spiritual maturation. And then you've got my background here. The uncoiling within the earth, I think, is fascinating. But yeah, whatever it is, the Kundalini, you have the 2 snakes. You got the similar the 2 snakes coiled around the staff, as I got up here. What I did, and won't let me show it again. No, it's not. Oh dear. Here we go. There we go. 2. That's very basic. Next time I could probably do better than that. And they cross each other 7 times. And within ourselves, these are the 7 chakra points, which a lot of you probably already know. And the goddess serpent, when awakened, climbs upwards, chakra by chakra, until she reaches our crown, the crown chakra, the top of the head. And she pierces each chakra, and that brings awakening to us. And sometimes when the top of our head pierces the chakra there, even W.B. Yeats refers to this as the fire in the head, the awakening, and the awareness and the sudden wisdom. So when her journey is complete, her subject is said to be fully enlightened. So Kundalini is our inner unwinding of the life force. And people who go into the Kundalini meditations know exactly what the major benefits of that is. It's where we get our best inspiration. And that's really why I kind of, at the beginning, advise going to your nature sanctuary and let this happen. So that's really the Kundalini, is you're going into your sanctuary and letting the serpent do its work. You're letting the nodes, in a way, do its work. Now, some texts, they describe Kundalini as 2 serpents coiled around the spine, much like the genetic double helix. There we go. So there you go. There's some ongoing Kundalini that's happening with us the whole time, our DNA. And to me, that reminds me of the Codacious symbol. So symbolically, the serpent's been considered to be the power beneath the earth. It's what makes the plants grow. It's to me, it's the she serpent. So maybe in winter, she is the energy of conception after all, that converts or fires up the fallen waste from the last harvest, and it becomes the life born in spring, just like Ellen transferring from being a fiery dragon into beautiful water. So, yeah, the comments are still coming about this. Let's go, which is lovely. Edward, giving the serpent wings as well. That's a good one. Thank you, Edward. Yeah, the Kundalini rising, giving your serpent wings. Absolutely terrific. Yes, that's perfect. That's pretty much the comment of the afternoon for me anyway. Let's go on to this, the medical symbol, the Codacious symbol of healing and medicine. There it is. And oath as well. It's of oath, and there's those wings that Edward kindly pointed out. And classical Greek writings claim that Hermes inherited the spirit of Codacious to become the conductor of souls, and there's an impression of that as well. And through his magic staff, Hermes could transmit enough healing power to even raise the dead from Hades. And to Greeks and Egyptians, the serpents then were very much symbols of eternity. Now, consider a snake shedding its skin. I got a photo of a snake that's just shed its skin there. And I think that comes into that. The symbol of shedding, of decaying the old. They're letting go of the old. And this is like the harvest is done. The soil is barren. It's got the debris. Burn that up, transform it. The leaves are going to go into the soil, all that good stuff through autumn and winter. And just like a snake coming out of that skin as if it's spring, the vibrant new birth of new spring, new skin. How wonderful that is. It's like getting out of the bath, getting out of the shower, isn't it? And it's like after the conception of the midwinter. So I look forward to talking to you more about water serpents next February. And of course, right, the stories of the Tuatha De Danann. Again, let's get back. We know about them living underground. I'm going to keep this minimal. It causes me to think of the Tuatha De Danann also being the serpent race as the snakes, especially after the Milesians came in. And there they were, providing the life that pushed up all the plants, the trees, and all the wonderful stuff of nature into the light. I also think of the medieval saints as being salesmen of all this, because they were old men after all. They were salesmen of scribing. They were selling the Gospels, selling the Gospel scriptures. They were selling the Psalms, selling the prophets, and claiming to proclaim that their scribed books were the all-powerful, much more powerful than what was being spoken. They knew Latin. They knew Greek. They knew the Ogham. Well, perhaps they didn't know the Ogham, but they knew how to scribe the stuff. Say they were scholars. They were saints. They were above everybody, and their books were the all-powerful. A bit like people with computers today. If you've not touched a computer and you've got someone come along and they know all the digital stuff on the computers, they're the all-powerful, aren't they? These days, the programmers, or the all-powerful, very much like the position of the scribes then. And so they regard themselves much more powerful than the guiding voices of the sensory serpents within us. And this is the other thing I bring up. And this is what my argument is against the scholars. The question, am I pouring out a load of bullshit? Is I'm very much relying on the serpent within, especially when I go to somewhere and pick up the stories. Of course, I've got all the facts wrong. I've got the information wrong, but there is a feeling, and I go back to my Chinese employer who said that, you know, all that stuff is quite irrelevant. It's the stuff that connects. How does it enchant you? How does it affect that dragon line? How does it affect that node that you were born with and connected to your womb, and you're going off into your north node on your pathway? How much is this just telling stories that you're supposed to remember as a scholar, compared to how is this enchantment of this symbolism approaching and ingraining with you today, and how are you going to move with it? And that, to me, is the guiding serpent. And I hope that has been a fair bit of the message today. So also the scribing writings, they seem to be very much about banishing the snakes, banishing the serpents from people, banishing them from within, banishing them from our tradition. And the Marduk church dragon was there, and its versus the Tiamat Kundalini dragon. And these scribe merchants claiming that the powers and promises of eternal life were much more paradise than what we are getting now from these devilish serpents. And again, more about this in February, I think. So to me, the snake realm, the serpent realm, the dragon realm, it's the secret guardianship of folklore, not the archives. I hope you are enchanted in believing that you're in a Kundalini serpent is guiding you, and that serpent is not guiding you into eating people and all that weird stuff that people say about serpents and devils and all that type of stuff. So I urge you that no saint or preacher causes inner serpents to become shy. Be confident that the snakes that are out there, as 90% of them, they're not going to harm you. They're totally harmless. It's only 10% of the snakes out there that are toxic, and they're going to run away from you anyway. So let your inner Kundalini serpent rise. Enjoy the books, enjoy the scribes, by all means, but don't lose that trust. That's what I'd like to encourage. I feel don't lose that trust of that inspiration that's in you. Even people, when they talk about the Christ heart, I believe they're still talking about that inner illumination. So, and then they read the books on top of that. So when we're understanding the cyclical pattern of hibernation that's coming up, regeneration, it's all the pattern of our sanctuary. So I believe if we understand our ability to carry venom, and that venom is not poison, but it's about caring, healing, it's using the regenerative force, and that becomes powerful. And on Wednesday, I'll be talking about this with the alehouse women, of how they transformed from the persecution of witchery, what happened then, and how the whole image of witchery has become into that of medicine. And that's why today's witches say they're herbalists, they're medicine people, they're not brewers. I'll be talking about this on Wednesday, but this is relevant, I think, to our snakes and serpents today. We need this balancing to survive. So to dissolve any denial of nature, don't deny being closer to Earth, because by being connected, we're just awakening our serpent within. And as Edward says, we get our wings. Anyway, dragon and serpent gods and goddesses, they don't die. They just transform into something else and something more wonderful. Now, serpent symbols to me, they reawaken, remind me that we are circles. Let's get this up. It's a lovely reminder there, above the earth, below the earth, dragon above, in this case, serpent below. We're circles, we're spirals. We're not straight line people. We cannot be calibrated. We can't be calculated. We can't be controlled. We're of freedom. We're of life. We're of love. We're of infinity. So that, my friends, is my dragons, serpents, and snakes sharing with you today. So I'm going to tell you what's coming up, because there's some great stuff coming up for this Samhain. Any more questions, please ask. As I say, don't forget the Patreon Woodland Bard there. It does help to keep the subscriptions and keep me online for you. Thank you for your help with that. So coming up, I haven't got many pictures for this, but the concluding part of Witches, Cauldrons and Ales coming up on Wednesday evening. And there'll be much more witchery, but as I said, there's going to be a very upbeat conclusion with this episode. Then 17th of October, it's the folklore again. People love this. This is the folklore of the crows, ravens, and corvids. And I'm trying not to say the COVID, of course. And then 24th of October is the part one of the Samhain origins. We're going to Owenagat and Emmemaka. And there's Claire and a friend, Hope, right down the bottom there in Owenagat Cave. And then after that, 31st of October, I don't have a picture of that. We're going to have part two, which is the hills of Talaka and Tara. And then 7th of November, at last, we're going to have social time. We're going to have the Samhain traditions gathering. That's when we got your stories and your poetry, and it's all over to you. So please message me to include your Samhain stories and poems for that Saturday. It's on the ancient sidereal time of Samhain too, on the 7th. So that's great. It's not on the modern Gregorian calendar day of Halloween. Anything else that, let's see what you're saying here before we say bye-bye. Fabulous and engaging as always, says Kelly. Trust the inner dragon. That's definitely what this is all about. So if you're watching this, a lot of people are going to be watching this evening in the week. Yeah, do leave your comments if you're watching this evening or through the week. Davina knows an alehouse woman. Look at that from Family Line. And I think you'll find Wednesday is going to be fascinating. And hopefully the previous two episodes made sense. And thank you, Sherry, for being here. And Shell, wonderful for that. And I've really gone into overtime again. And so enjoy a safe week full of all those wonders, inspirations, and enchantments. Where am I on this? Is there anything I haven't shown you? No, I think we're pretty much. I've given it all with what I got this year. So until next Sunday, Love to everyone. Thank you for joining me. Play well. And that's all I got. Bye-bye and have a wonderful day and days ahead. Bye.